So, good day, everyone. We are the Four Art Doe Group, and we are here to present the Renaissance through Baroque period of art. So, the origin of Renaissance art, Italian intellectuals and artists perceive this time period often known as the Proto-Renaissance, from 1280 to 1400s, as a reawakening to the ideas and accomplishments of classical Roman culture. Renaissance art aimed to convey the experience of the person as well as the beauty and mystique of the natural world, in addition to expressing classical Greco-Roman traditions. From Italo-Byzantine style, Pietro Cavallini was a Roman fresco painter and mosaicist whose work represents the first significant attempt in Italian art to move away from Byzantine stylizations and toward the plastic illusionistic depiction of figures in space. From between 1277 and 1290, Cavallini completed a series of fresco decorations for the nave of Sao Paulo Fiori, Le Mura in Rome. These were painted over the outlines of 5th century early Christian frescoes in an attempt to restore the artworks. Meanwhile, in Florence, Cimabue's paintings, also known as Seni di Pepo or Seni di Pepi, demonstrated a greater interest in depicting space and in modeling figures with gradations of light and shade.
Before the early Renaissance, the Proto-Renaissance was suppressed by sickness and conflict in the latter years of the 14th century, and its impact did not emerge until the first decade of the 15th century. High Renaissance art, which generally spanned from the early 1490s until Charles V of Spain's armies captured Rome in 1527, was dominated by three great masters, Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael. So for Leonardo was the epitome of the Renaissance man because of the depth of his intellect, range of his interests and abilities, and articulation of classical and humanist principles. While Michelangelo Buonarroti drew inspiration from the human form and produced works of enormous magnitude. He was the most important high Renaissance sculptor, creating works like the David in his birthplace, Florence, and the Pietà in St. Peter's Cathedral in 1499.
So, the end of the Renaissance and the Reformation in 1500s to 1600. In art history, the 16th century saw the Renaissance, Mannerism, and Baroque. All of these styles are influenced by historical causes, most notably the Protestant Reformation's challenge to the Church in Rome's spiritual and political supremacy. So Martin Luther initiated the Reformation in 1517 by posting his 95 theses on the door of the Castle Church in Wittenberg, Germany. These theses reflected Luther's worries about various church activities, mainly the selling of indulgences, but also church theology. The church reiterated the value of pictures at the Council of Trent. However, it cautioned church leaders to encourage proper image usage and prevent the risk of idolatry. The council ruled that pictures are valuable because through these images we bring honor to the holy figure. The Catholic Church eagerly embraced the religious power of art, while Protestants vehemently condemned the worship of pictures. The church claimed that the visual arts were crucial in leading the faithful because of its duty to inspire and instruct. The need to understand the Christ's death, the martyr's anguish, and the saint's visions. Artists like Caravaggio embraced a strong dramatic realism that is emphasized by strong contrasts between light and dark and closely cropped compositions. Giovanni Battista Gauli used illusionism to blur the lines between painting, sculpture, architecture, and the actual and portrayed worlds.
So as we talk Renaissance through Baroque in European history, year 1585 to 1700s is termed the Baroque period. First generation critics of the 18th century who were fans of neoclassicisms, restraint and order describe Borromini, and Pietro da Cortona's creations as Baroque because they were strange and malformed like a pearl with a flaw. So here are the characteristics of Baroque. Baroque art is typically distinguished by contrast, exaggerated motion, lavish detail, deep color, and grandeur. One characteristic of Baroque art is the use of chiaroscuro. So for the differentiation of Renaissance and Baroque in art, foreshortening, sfumato, chiaroscuro, and accurate linear perspective are distinguishing characteristics of Renaissance art. Whereas contrast, exaggerated motion, exuberant detail, deep color, chiaroscuro, and grandeur are distinguishing characteristic of Baroque art. In sculpture, in Renaissance sculpture, the use of groups of figures, dynamic movement, and energy of human forms, and many optimal viewing angles are the main aspects. Other significant features include the use of naturalism, religious themes, syncretistic influences, and the use of marble and stone. While in architecture, Renaissance architecture is distinguished by the employment of mathematically exact height to width ratios, symmetry, and harmony, as well as the creative application of arcs, domes, columns, and pediments. On the other hand, Baroque architecture places a strong emphasis on big masses, domes, and prominent spaces. So for our conclusion, these two distinct periods in history stand out when talking about art and great masters, Baroque and Renaissance. The work created during these times were very similar to each other, but they still have distinct differences. So this ends our presentation. Once again, we are the four